Sagittarius, the sacred mirror. What your soul needed you to see before the next chapter begins. Not everyone stays, but everyone leaves a mirror. Sagittarius, throughout your life you've met countless souls. Some have stayed for seasons, some for mere moments, and others have left quietly, taking pieces of your story with them. Yet none of these meetings were random. Every connection, no matter how fleeting or painful, was a mirror placed in your path. A mirror that reflected parts of you had forgotten, denied, or weren't ready to face. Sometimes it showed you the strength you didn't know you had. Other times it revealed wounds you thought you had buried. These mirrors were never meant to define you, only to awaken you. Now, as one chapter of your journey quietly closes, a new one waits at the edge of your horizon. The air feels different. You can sense a shift even if you can't name it yet. This is the moment the universe invites you to pause, to look back at each reflection not with regret, but with understanding. To gather the wisdom left in their wake and carry it forward like a lantern into what comes next. Because when you see yourself clearly, without the distortions of past hurts or borrowed expectations, your light sharpens, your path clears, and you step into the future no longer searching for validation, but embodying it. And if this message is stirring something deep within you, let it be the sign you've been waiting for. Stay with me, Sagittarius. Like, share, and subscribe so we can continue this journey together. Through the constellations, into the soul, and toward the chapter you were always meant to live. Gate 1. The relationships that weren't perfect, but were perfect for your awakening. Sagittarius, there was a time you believed that the people who truly mattered would never hurt you, that love meant safety, and that loyalty meant forever. And yet, life kept placing you in the path of relationships that felt like contradictions. Deep connections wrapped in disappointment, moments of joy intertwined with heartbreak. You told yourself, if only they hadn't left, if only things had worked out differently, if only I had been enough. But with time and with the quiet clarity that comes from standing at a distance, you begin to see. These relationships were never mistakes. They were precise instruments of your awakening. Some people arrived in your life to break open a part of you that had grown numb. They challenged your boundaries not to destroy you, but to make you realize you had them in the first place. They pushed you to ask, what do I deserve? What will I no longer accept? Others held a mirror to your deepest fears. Abandonment, inadequacy, the ache of not being chosen. Not because they wanted you to drown in them, but because your soul was ready to finally meet those fears face to face. Think back to the person who loved you fiercely, but whose love also suffocated you. At the time, you may have felt ungrateful for wanting space, ashamed for not being able to match their intensity. But in truth, they were there to teach you that love isn't measured by constant presence, but by the freedom it allows. Or the friend who once stood beside you in every storm, until the day they turned away when you needed them most. Their absence forced you into the uncomfortable truth that your survival couldn't be outsourced. You had to become your own anchor. These imperfect connections were sacred teachers, dressed in human form. They didn't stay because their role was never to accompany you into every chapter, only to hand you a piece of yourself you'd misplaced. Every ending, no matter how abrupt or devastating, carried a hidden delivery, a truth you could only discover through loss. And here is where the mirror becomes so important. When you look into it now, you don't just see the heartbreak, you see the resilience that grew out of it. You don't just remember the betrayal. You remember the moment you stopped apologizing for your boundaries. You don't just mourn the absence. You acknowledge the space it created for something more aligned to arrive. Sagittarius, your soul doesn't view these relationships the way your human heart once did. Where you once saw rejection, your soul sees redirection. Where you once felt unworthy, your soul knows it was being refined. And this is the profound gift, to realize that the people who didn't fit into the forever of your story still played a vital, irreplaceable role in the becoming of who you are today. They weren't perfect, but they were perfect for the moment your spirit needed to wake up. And when you can hold that truth without bitterness, you set both them and yourself free. Not because the hurt never happened, but because you've stepped far enough into your own light to see the full picture. The one where you are not the broken one left behind, but the soul who rose from every mirror with more of your own reflection restored. Gate 2. Not everyone is meant to stay. Some are here to unlock a door. Sagittarius, some encounters in your life were never meant to last a lifetime. They were meant to change the trajectory of your inner world in ways permanence never could. There are people whose presence in your story was like a sudden spark in a darkened room. Intense, illuminating but fleeting. They didn't walk into your life to settle in. They walked in to leave something behind. A key you didn't even know you'd been searching for. You might remember the stranger whose eyes met yours on a long train ride. The brief conversation that inexplicably touched something deep inside you. Or the person you loved so profoundly that their sudden departure left a silence echoing through every corner of your being. At the time, it felt like life was punishing you, tearing away something precious before you could fully understand it. But now, from where you stand, you can see the shape of the gift. They're leaving carved out space. And in that space, you met yourself in a way you never had before. Some people open doors by arriving, others open them by leaving. The ones who leave often give you something more enduring than their presence. They give you back the parts of yourself you had given away without noticing. Perhaps it was your independence, long buried under the weight of trying to be who someone else wanted you to be. Perhaps it was your voice, silenced in the name of keeping the peace. Or maybe it was your belief in your own worth, a belief you had unknowingly entrusted to someone else's approval. Their exit was not a cruelty, but a catalyst. The empty chair they left behind became the seat you eventually filled yourself. The conversations you once longed to have with them became the inner dialogues that healed you. The moments you thought you couldn't survive without them became the very moments you realized you could. And more than that, you could thrive. You see, Sagittarius, not every soul is assigned to walk the full length of your path. Some are there to hand you a torch just when the road ahead turns dark. Others are there to close a door behind you so you'll have no choice but to step forward. And when you start to trust that rhythm, arrivals and departures alike, you stop clinging to what cannot stay, and you begin honoring the sacred timing of what does. So the next time you think of them, let your heart soften. Let the gratitude flow, even if the wound still whispers. Because whether through their staying or their leaving, they handed you something irreplaceable. Access to a part of yourself that was waiting to be reclaimed. And that, Sagittarius, is a gift you carry into every chapter that follows. A reminder that your soul knows exactly who and what to bring into your life, and exactly when to let it go. Gate 3. You are no longer just reacting, you are choosing. There was a time, Sagittarius, when your heart was an open field without fences. Whoever walked in could plant whatever they wished. Love, doubt, hope, fear. You lived in a state of constant reaction. If someone offered kindness, you bloomed. If they withdrew, you withered. You shaped yourself around the expectations, moods, and needs of others, mistaking that shape-shifting for love. But the truth is, you were exhausting yourself, giving away the authority over your own energy. Now something has shifted. You are no longer waiting for others to decide how much of yourself you are allowed to feel. You are not letting the temperature of someone else's presence dictate the climate of your soul. You are choosing. And choosing, Sagittarius, is power. You choose the people who make space for your truth without trying to edit it. You choose conversations where your voice is heard without needing to raise it. You choose relationships that feel like a homecoming, not a battlefield. This doesn't mean you only surround yourself with comfort. It means you surround yourself with respect. You no longer chase those who make you question your worth. You no longer tolerate rooms where your light is dimmed to make others comfortable. It wasn't an overnight transformation. It began quietly with small acts of defiance that didn't feel like defiance at all. Saying no when you used to say yes just to keep the peace. Letting a call go unanswered because you weren't in the space to give. Leaving a gathering early because your energy felt unsettled. These choices, once soaked in guilt, now feel like sacred rituals of self-respect. And here's the thing, people notice. Some will call you distant, cold, or changed. They will say they missed the old you. Not realizing the old you they loved was a version that kept bleeding for their comfort. But you are not here to be endlessly available. You are here to be present in the moments and with the people who truly see you. This shift is not about building walls, it's about building a center. A place within yourself so rooted that you can open the door to others without fearing they will blow it off its hinges. You can welcome love without being afraid of loss. You can hold space for others without losing the ground beneath your feet. And the beauty of this new way of living? You are no longer dependent on who stays or who leaves to feel whole. Whether the room is full or empty, your sense of self remains intact. The relationships you cultivate now are not born from desperation but from alignment. They are not about filling a void, but about expanding what is already abundant within you. Sagittarius, this is soul maturity. It is not loud or showy. It is in the way you walk away from what feels wrong without needing to explain yourself. It is in the way you stay in what feels right without fearing it will be taken away. It is in the way you no longer let your life be defined by the push and pull of others' emotions. You are no longer a reed bending in the wind of other people's storms. You are the ground itself, steady, vast, and unshaken. And from here, every choice you make is an act of creation, not survival. Gate 4, the true mirror is yourself. Every person who has ever walked into your life, Sagittarius, has been a mirror. Some reflected back your beauty and brilliance. Others revealed your wounds and unhealed fears. But all along, the most important mirror was never in their hands. It was in yours. For years, you may have searched for validation in the eyes of others, waiting for someone to finally say, "You're enough." You shaped your choices around being understood, accepted, even adored. And when people didn't give you that reflection, it felt like a fracture in your sense of self. But the truth your soul needs you to see is this. No one can hand you the image you've been longing for, because that image lives within you. The mirror you hold now is not glass. It is awareness. When you look into it, you see the parts you once hid. The sensitivity you were told was weakness, the tenderness you thought made you too fragile, the doubts you feared would make you unworthy. And instead of trying to erase them, you welcome them. You understand now that these are not flaws to be fixed but facets of your humanity. You begin to speak to yourself differently. No more sentences that start with "I should have" or "I'm not enough." Instead, you hear yourself say, "I am learning. I am here. I am still worthy in my becoming." The mirror reflects a whole person, not because you've achieved perfection, but because you've stopped cutting away the pieces that didn't look pretty enough. And something beautiful happens when you start seeing yourself clearly. Life begins to reflect that vision back to you. Opportunities show up that honor your values. Relationships deepen with those who respect your boundaries. Even the challenges you face feel different because you no longer approach them from a place of lack. You meet them as someone who knows their own light, even in the dark. The mirror is honest. It will show you where you are still clinging, still afraid, still doubting. But it will also remind you that these are not signs of failure. They are invitations to grow without abandoning yourself. And every time you choose to meet your own gaze with compassion instead of criticism, you are polishing that mirror, making it brighter, clearer, more true. Sagittarius, you've spent enough time trying to see yourself through borrowed eyes. Now you are the witness of your own beauty, the keeper of your own truth, the protector of your own light. When you stand before this sacred mirror, you don't need anyone to tell you who you are. You already know. And that knowing will carry you into the next chapter with a steadiness no one can take away. Conclusion: the next chapter doesn't need you to be someone else, only to be yourself. Sagittarius, you have stood before every mirror life has offered you. The soft ones that showed you your kindness, the harsh ones that revealed your shadow, and the cracked ones that distorted your reflection until you barely recognized yourself. But now, as one chapter closes and another quietly begins, you realize something profound. You no longer need those mirrors to tell you who you are. You have walked through seasons where you searched for approval like water in a desert. You have let your sense of worth rise and fall with the presence or absence of others. And yet, somewhere along the way you began to turn inward. You learned that peace is not a performance and worth is not a vote. You stopped asking, "Do they see me?" and started asking, "Do I see myself?" The answer now is yes. You see the fire that has survived storms. You see the tenderness that stayed soft in a world that tried to harden you. You see the wisdom etched into you by every ending and every beginning. And most importantly, you see that you don't need to fix yourself to be worthy of the life you desire. This next chapter will not demand that you become a brighter, shinier version of yourself. It will not require that you prove anything. It will simply ask you to keep walking in the truth you have found, the truth that you are whole, even as you continue to grow. And in this truth, you will draw to you the people, opportunities, and experiences that match your light. One morning soon you will catch your own reflection, maybe in a mirror, maybe in a quiet moment of stillness, and you will smile. Not because you have arrived at some perfect destination, but because you have finally come home to yourself. And in that homecoming, Sagittarius, the world will see you not as they wish you to be, but as you truly are, radiant, steady, and free.